Batman was such a shock to me, and it probably shouldn't have been. Matt Reeves has been behind some really good and interesting films, and what is there not to like about indie-coded Robert Pattinson, right? But still, I was confused about its purpose. Being that we had 2 or 3 Batman universe stories at that time, kind of like simultaneously almost, and just a lot of different versions of Bruce Wayne running around in the world. So it didn't make sense. But as is typical of my life, I was wrong. The Batman was amazing. It was a hit. It was dark, full sending into a new age noir vibe, and just a unique take that we hadn't seen before on the character was brought to film. In addition, we got a colorful cast to fill out the story that really added a lot of value to this new universe that was seemingly being built. And in comes the Penguin.
Gonna tear down the empire from the inside out. Whoever controls the drug business controls the streets. I'll be running the whole damn trade.
I was honestly not expecting this show, but was really excited for a number of reasons. One, the equity that the Batman had built for me flowed right into what I felt I would get from the Penguin. 2, Colin Farrell is one of my low-key faves. He's a fantastic actor, and seeing him go to such lengths to pull off this character that is the Penguin was something that was a guaranteed no miss for me. And that brings me to 3. It just looked really good. It felt like they were going the distance in regards to crafting the series, with the makeup of Colin being so involved and just the overall commitment to keeping the dark, gritty look of the Batman film. It felt like they were putting a ton of energy into this one. And the Penguin is not a bad show, like at all. This video isn't about it being terrible, and it isn't mean to trash it, but the show does have a major flaw to me. It's not really about the Penguin. Before I continue, if you're new here, or not, regardless, what's up? I'm Mars Hogan, and yes, for those of you who have been watching, I am still just a something film guy, and probably will be for a while. But I'm here to talk cinema. That's what this video is, that's what this channel is. Everything cinema, movies, television, the ins and outs, my perspectives, my suggestions on things that I watch, and whatever else you'd expect from a film channel on YouTube. And if you're here, you must like this kind of stuff, right? And if that's the case, why don't you subscribe? I won't be mad if you reserve it until the end, but at that point, I also want you to like this video. And also drop a comment, because I love to chat and connect with people who watch my content and just love talking about this stuff. Watch this all the way to the end, and when you realize that it was the greatest 30 or so minutes that you spent today, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on so you won't miss new videos from me. But enough about myself, let's get back to enjoying this video. Alright, so boom, let's talk about why the Penguin has an identity crisis. This is my first time talking about a television series on this channel, mainly because there's so much to series most of the time that I think it's hard to cover things and do it justice. But for this one, I feel I can cover just the one season. And plus, I think the concept of this video is more high level, so I'm not sure I'll have to get extremely detailed here. And I'm more so just giving my thoughts and really a review of the show, so to speak. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, the Penguin is meant to be a spin-off about the titular character and what he does in the wake of the ending of the Batman film from 2022. And from what I know, this is a pretty direct follow-up to the storyline from that movie, and we're getting into the challenges that the Penguin, whose real name is Oswald Cobb, Oz for short, is facing on his journey to try to become the kind of head of the underworld in Gotham, now that Carmine Falcone, the former head of the Falcone mob family that we see played by John Turturro in the film, has died and left a void of power. And if you know anything about the Penguin from the comics, this is a much more stripped back depiction of the character. He's not the affluent, rich mob boss yet. This is more of a prequel of sorts to the Penguin character that most people are familiar with, or an altogether detour from that character as a whole. We're not to the top hat or the monocle or the umbrella, the cane, whatever, but we are definitely getting to see the same ruthless criminal, maybe even more so.
But That ain't the way the world works. America's a hustle.
All right. So if you haven't seen The Penguin yet, there are going to be spoilers for the vast majority of the show as we dig into this topic. So if you don't want to know, just come back later on after you watch it. Don't forget to come back. But we're about to go into spoiler territory right about now. So the show gets off to a slow start for me. Our introduction to the Penguin is a little bit more establishing than I feel like is needed, given the fact that we're coming right off the Batman, and also the fact that this is a very familiar character. And backstory for him is definitely important. I don't want to discount that, but I think we could have gotten what we got in episode 2 and put it in episode 1 and just condensed them both. Yet and still, the grittiness and the nature of these characters still manages to make you want to dive into this new offset of the Batman universe. I think the show has its ups and downs, and I feel like it finishes really strong, but I also think a lot of the driving force of the narrative is mismanaged as far as who we're advertising this story to be about. The Penguin. Don't get me wrong, Colin Farrell does a phenomenal job embodying this character, and I commend him on his commitment to the role. However, and I think everyone can agree, mainly because I've seen all the conversations around the show was proverbially stolen by another character, the Hangman, Sofia Gigante, formerly Falcone. She's played by Kristen Milioti, I think that's how you pronounce her name. And she's a really tremendous actress who a lot of people didn't seem to be very familiar with, but she's been in a few really great shows. And I'm thinking back specifically to that Runaway Peacock hit, The Resort, which came out last year. You should go check that out if you haven't. It's a super good, like, thriller kind of, even a little bit of a romance, but whatever. Anyways, her character is the main adversary to Oz in the show, and I think they place her in a position that allowed for her to be a really strong presence in the narrative. To the point though, where at times it feels like more her show than his. And I'd love to check this, but I argue that she has close to, if not more, screen time than Colin Farrell does. Probably not more. That may be a stretch, but it feels like we see her like a lot. And I'm not mad about it. I have no problem with it at all, actually, because she's really great. But I think this creates a problem in the direction of the show when looking at it with a wider lens. I think we get so much of Sofia throughout the series, and it's such compelling content that we almost don't want to leave her perspective. And I felt like, and this was a sentiment that was shared by many people that I spoke with about the show, she is actually more interesting than Oz is. And more than that, more redeemable as a character. That part, I think, is on purpose, which makes me think all of it was, in fact. The fact that we even dive into Sofia's backstory at all is one thing. But on the second thing, we really take a deep dive there. And I think she's given like a whole episode for her backstory. And even further than that, it's a really tragic, really endearing point of view of who she is as a character. Okay, so as a young girl, her mother unalived herself, and she was raised pretty much solely by her father, Carmine Falcone. And as she grows older, she proves valuable to the crime family, and she is primed by her father to become the head of the family. But then, just as all this is happening, a reporter confronts her about her father, who the reporter believes has SA'd and then taken care of a number of women. And when she, Sofia, brings this up to her father, he turns on her, thinking that she is working with the police essentially. And we gain a dark understanding here. Not only did he take care of those women, he also took care of his own wife, Sofia's mother. And this was something that in the back of Sofia's mind, she had suspected, but didn't have a full understanding of and realization of until then. And he then pins everything on Sofia, which sends her to prison as the wrongfully convicted hangman. And of course, as you can expect from being in prison, this really breaks and messes up Sofia and her psyche. Okay, so back to purpose. We can juxtapose her story with Oz's story, and it's night and day. He had a tough upbringing, yes, but he was always a villain and always sociopathic. His backstory revealed an extremely disturbing aspect of his character. He left his two brothers to drown, and die in an old underground tunnel network that they used to play in, all because they poked fun at his leg condition. Mainly, he was trying to walk down a ladder and they were, giving him grief about it. And they went down there in the first place as a joke on him. And then he just leaves them there and they die. And he never reveals this to his mother. He just acts like nothing happened. He acts like he was just the perfect child. And it's not revealed until later that he was actually there and he left them to die, even though his mother says that she knew the whole time. This was absolutely vile, and he was a young boy at the time. And it's indicative of who the character is. When he shoots Alberto in the very first episode, it's over disrespect, and it's not even really that crazy. And we're constantly made to feel like, on the other hand, Sophia is crazy throughout the series, but as everything erodes towards the end, we come to fully realize what we should have known all along. Oz is the real one who is crazy, who is unstable, who is completely all about himself and will stop at nothing to get what he wants. But the narrative kind of plays with us a bit. Like, it shows us that obviously he's a villain, but for a good half of the show, he doesn't seem like the worst of the villains that we interact with. And it's because he's this underdog figure, someone who represents a certain ilk, someone who is like on the come up from the bottom, so you want to root for him in that way. And it's also found in his relationship with his mother and his relationship with Vic. Vic being the young man that he recruits early on in the show. We're given strong impressions over and over again about how much he cares about them both, how he's invested in their well-being, how he attaches himself to their wants and needs. And we'll get to the actual reality of this later, which is a bit different, a lot different. But I think a shift first happens at that moment that we get to see Sophia's backstory. For one, it's around this time that the narrative kind of leaves Oz and gives her a lot of attention and value in the show. And by living with her character, we get to understand her more. And with that, she's making choices that we can frame in a different light. Like her choosing to do away with the entire Falcone family except her niece. She recognizes her purity, and even when she could have killed her later, when the niece may have been able to rat her out, she still doesn't do it and just tries to have her understand the situation instead. I think we're meant to kind of reconfigure the roles in our viewpoint as an audience, and I think this kind of split dynamic that we get from the overall show enforces this as well. Even though I'm not particularly fond of it as a viewer, I came to the Penguin to watch the Penguin, and I don't feel like I get enough of that. We're just also lucky that Sophia is extremely compelling as well. On that note, I'd love to explore where her story goes in future shows and movies if that were possible. I know there's a rumor about a Joker show in the works that's meant to follow the second The Batman film that's coming out next year, I think it is. And it's based around Barry Keoghan's portrayal that we see at the end credits of the first film. And that is super interesting to me. And with the way the Penguin ends, I think we could potentially access a storyline that includes Sophia there. Okay, detour there, but anyways, back to the Penguin. The ending really brings Oz's story full circle. Despite the detour we take into Sophia's world for a good portion of the middle of the show. And the revelation can be viewed one of two ways in my opinion. You either hate the character and don't care about what happens next, or you hate the character and you want to see him do more terrible things. I'm torn but leaning the latter, but I understand both sides. So the end of the show sees him on top, Sophia in jail, and everything right with the underworld. However, it's not all perfect. His mother is in a vegetative state after an accident between him and Sophia. She was very old and sickly throughout the show, so this wasn't a surprise really, but still. On that same thought, earlier in the show, she ponders over her own life and tells Oz that she wouldn't want to be left alive if she couldn't actually live. But at the end, Oz does the opposite, and he's left her in his new penthouse, hooked up to a machine, keeping her lifeless body alive, overlooking Gotham. And this is what I mean by you hate this character. He never actually cared about his mother or her wishes. It was always only about his interests and what he valued from their relationship. This clearly shows that he never actually cared about his mother, like, at all. It was more so just about the image and the desire that he held in himself for her. And the real kicker, he freaking kills Vic. Like, should I have expected this? Yes, but it still didn't make it any easier. Like, my man did not deserve that, bro. And Oz felt like he had to get rid of his weakness, and the feeling of closeness to Vic was too much of a threat to him. Really though, in my opinion, I took this as a challenge to his power. Someone who rose with him, someone that could potentially do to him what he did to everyone else. And this is really where you get that love to hate the character or just completely shut the show off moment. And here at the very end, we're beginning to get our full picture of the comic book Penguin that we know and love. Maybe not love, maybe know and hate. But anyway, it's the suit, there's a hat, and probably a monocle and cane to come. And I'm curious to see what we get, if anything, from this character in the next The Batman movie, now that we're finally being introduced to the full-fledged concept. All in all, I like the show. I think it has its flaws, but luckily there's goodness in those flaws that it has. It's definitely imperfect, it's a bit boring and slow at times, and it's hard to maintain interest in our titular character for the entirety of the show, if I'm being honest. But with really good acting and an extremely solid supporting cast, you don't really miss that interest in Oz very much. Now, this is okay for this one season, I think, and if it remains a limited series, I think it will go down as a pretty good show, but I'm not sure that a pattern like that could carry on if the show continues. Also, I'm not 100% sure the Penguin is an engaging enough character to create a series around either. So they may be stuck in a hard spot there if there is a desire to continue his story. But hey, bring Sophia back, or give her a show if you want. I'd watch it. Seriously though, I ultimately don't think the show really fails any The Batman fans. Whether you're watching for the character's historical cachet, or whether you're watching for Colin Farrell's portrayal, I think both sides are offered something to sink their teeth into. It falls short in some plot elements and some story building elements, but the overall interest factor is high, and it does end off as a pretty solid show. It's somewhere between a 6 and a 7.5 for me, out of 10 of course. Leaning lower right now just because I don't think I'd revisit the show, but I would go higher if they made another season because I do think I definitely anticipate seeing where the story goes next. But at the same time, it's like, could that even happen and be compelling without Batman? Like, honestly, I'm not sure now that I think about it. There's no more backstory, no more come up. He is the big boss now. We could maybe get another strong villain to contend with, but I think we need a character with more cachet for a second season, like a Freeze, a Scarecrow, Joker, of course. Something where the Penguin really has to work to win and where he's not sitting in a complete position of power. That's really the only way I can see us having a second season better than this one. But let me not get ahead of myself. As of this recording, it's still just a limited series, and we'll just have to see what the future holds for Colin and Oz and the Penguin. Have you seen the Penguin? I'd love to know your thoughts on the show, whether you liked it or not, or just if you disagree or agree with my points about it. It would be cool to see what other people think, especially because I've heard a lot from my friend group, so I know there are people out there who are talking about it. So with that, drop your thoughts in the comments down below on that, the video, or whatever else you want. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you liked it, go ahead, hit that like as well, and subscribe for more content like this if it's at all interesting to you. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Thanks again, and have a good one. Peace.